All right, welcome back to the Unsubscribed Tribe, your weekly dose of everything that you probably don't want to hear because it's the truth. I'm here with my good friend Ben Lee. Ben, how you doing?
Hey, same old, same shit, different day. That's the world of COVID.
Yeah, well, we've been chatting online since the beginning. So the remote working has been interesting. We again have met. We met what 15 years ago on an online platform, and so
Oh,
we're
yeah.
used to people being online. And COVID has really sent people on the internet, particularly into the online dating scene. So that's been a really interesting space to watch.
Yeah, it's online dating just seems like I don't know where to start with this. Like there's just so much going on about how like insane it's gotten over the years. Like remember like back in like the early days of the internet, they had like what, like
I was on Face the Jury.
I don't
That was one, and there was Hot or Not.
but I remember Hot or Not very
Yeah,
briefly.
so very similar. I was on Face the Jury. I actually have a friend I still talk to today. He's now married with kids. He had a actually significant part in my life when I used to do a lot of partying. He helped hold me accountable to the partying I was doing, and it totally helped me move past that. But yeah, we've seen the evolution of Face the Jury, Plenty of Fish, and then Tinder came out, and that has really changed it. In 2016, back in the early days of Tinder, I noticed they actually changed the platform to discourage connections and conversations. So I have again been meeting people off the internet for a really long time. Obviously, dating is part of that. So Tinder in 2016 made this change. And so you used to get a message from somebody and you would open up the message and start having that conversation with somebody. Tinder changed it so that when you opened up the app, you went straight into swiping. And so that automatic swiping started happening. And I noticed I stopped meeting people because the user experience had completely changed and it wasn't allowing me to go directly in the conversation. I completely forgot about it.
Yeah, it's like Tinder popularized gamification of dating, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it gets to even to a point where when you're on this thing, you're swiping left and right on every profile, you start to lose sight of the fact that each profile is like a person, like on the streets, who's just like has their own experiences, thoughts, feelings, blah, blah, blah. But it's just been condensed down in just like this game, like, oh yeah, they look pretty hot. Swipe right on that. Like, oh no, I'm gonna swipe left. And yeah, it just condenses that. I remember when Tinder came out, like in what, like 2013, 2014, something like
Hmm.
that. And it was like fairly open. Like I think this is before, way before it got really crazy, the monetization, and they realized what a beast it is. But like being in a university town with all the other like university students, everyone's on was on Tinder. So I see like girls I went to class with, girls I TA'd, and you can swipe on them. They would might swipe on you and be like, oh, interesting, here we go.
Yeah.
And like I remember like talking to my friends, and they were like setting up all kinds of stuff like on Tinder. Like it was just like this insane like social app. And I guess, the Tinder folks realized what they had on their hands here. And like when I was last on an apps, I just didn't even use it because it's such like a scam. Like you're forced to pay money for it to work, is essentially what it does, I think, with all apps now. So it's an interesting just juxtaposition of the original intention of the app, and good old capitalism comes around of finding ways to monetize on it, and here we are today.
Yeah, and I mean, that's just the app itself. I mean, there's bots on there. I think that's really changed things. There's a lot of people who don't realize the difference between a real person and a fake person. And then the interesting thing is the way that they treat a fake person, then they start talking to a real person, and you can't treat them the same way. And then catfishing has been such an interesting thing. And just even going back to that user experience, one of the things I don't like about Tinder is when you swipe right, it says Janet likes you. And I'm like, no, I don't. Maybe I'm interested in your profile that you've presented, but I don't know that those pictures are you. I don't know if you smell bad. And I get on this app, I start talking to guys, and it's so funny because a lot of them will start talking about sex right away and sexting, and I'm like, dude, like, just go look at porn. This is so much work for me. I'm getting carpal tunnel syndrome. And also, why do you want to have sex with somebody that you don't even know if they are a man or a woman? Like, you have not confirmed this. And I hear tons of stories of people using other people's photos, or using old photos. And it's funny because we've been around for so long, and I think back in the day there was just more nerds out there, and I've always been myself, you've always been yourself. But I get comments like, you're better looking in person, like your photos don't tell the whole story, and you're just like you say you are. Which, it's funny because a lot of people, I think they're addicted to that dopamine rush. They want to get the validation from other people, and so the profile that they put out there isn't necessarily an accurate representation of themselves. And then they go to meet the people and they're upset. They're like, oh, like, I've seen this like a few times where women are like, oh, I'm super self-conscious, and then I went to go meet this guy and he was visibly disappointed in how I looked. And I'm like, that's your fault. You were the one that put your pictures up. So I could tell you that right now you're using the dating app for validation instead of seeking a true connection. And that's really what it's become, is a source of validation for so many people.
Yeah, it's basically the name of the game. It's like there's some stat about there about, I forget what percentage of matches are just like they actually don't turn into conversation. Just playing a game of like how many people can you collect in your little profile list.
Yeah, and I've
And
read other stats about people being like 40% are in relationships. And you said that that's a pretty high rate in the GTA where you are. You're seeing a lot of women who are in open marriages.
yeah, like it's funny. Like I used to play a game with my buddy, saying that based on the picture, I can tell this person is like into polyamory or not.
Really? So how could you tell?
They always have like the dyed purple or blue or rainbow hair,
Okay.
um, an insane amount of piercings, typically in terrible, terrible physical shape.
Yeah, this is
Um,
the thing. I'm like, oh, I see a lot of these people, and I'm like, yeah, if I was your partner, I'd want to sleep with somebody else too.
and they just look, absolutely insufferable. And it's like, then their profile's like, don't contact me if you're here to just waste my time. And like
Really?
every picture that like they're just scowling, there's not even smiling, it's just in each
Interesting.
profile picture. What I noticed, as a guy, swiping on women, is you can tell also, who is out of shape as well, based on the fact that there's no body pictures.
Yes, exactly. A
And
lot of people do this.
yeah, and I reckon guys do it as well. My observation was always, because of like differences in hormones and therefore fat distribution, a lot of
We
guys when
know
they're
this. You
fat,
and I can tell this right now.
yeah, when a lot of guys who are fat, like you can see it in their face, like a
Yeah,
big like, double chin going and whatnot. But some girls, like from like the neck up, look
look
like,
very different.
yeah, and then you get the whole picture, and it's because they carry all their body fat in that lower quadrant. And when you're taking pictures, from like an upward angle, looking down, just from the neck up, that's like like your best vantage point. So I learned that lesson a few times after doing enough swiping, and then like getting your Instagram and realizing, oh, this is not quite what I signed up for.
Yeah, I know, and it's
Well,
funny because, like, I don't wanna judge other people for whatever, position they are in their fitness journey, but we obviously are super deep into this. This is 100% part of our lives, and so when you have somebody and it's not part of their lives, that's not a match for me. And also, it can create a strain on relationships. Like, I get a lot of guys that are like, I am just amazed that they reach out to me, and it's like they're, closing in on 50, they've got 3 kids, and this is on Plenty of Fish because that's just an open platform, and I originally thought Plenty of Fish was great because you have all these kind of identifiers, and so it's easier to see if somebody smokes, if somebody has kids and stuff like that, where you don't necessarily see that on Tinder. But these guys are coming after me, and it's conversations like, "I was married, I stopped working out for 25 years, but now I'm divorced and maybe we can work out together." And like, I don't work out with anybody unless they're paying me. But I get all these messages all the time like, these guys want me to be their personal trainer. And A, no, I don't. B, that's a terrible relationship to have. I've seen a lot of couples be in this position where you have like, especially if it's a guy with a feet like a woman, like that is a terrible position to have your your romantic partner in a position of a coach where they're critiquing you on your diet and fitness, because it's very hard to separate that from your personal and the professional coaching life.
Yeah, that's actually really well described. Like, like my last major relationship was that like the girl, she was like kind of into but not really. And then when we started dating, she was like, yeah, I want, to get me to this next level. And I thought, yeah, this will be a fun thing we can do together. But
Not
no,
fun.
like
Not fun.
it's not fun at all, because I think, when people don't have come to the background you and I do, they don't realize how much like efforts and like difficulty it is. And when they're not used to getting that that constant admiration, or not used to getting that critique about, okay, here's what you need to work on, here's what is lacking. It's hard, as you said, hard to separate the personal from the professional.
Yeah, and I mean,
And
like, in a relationship, you could be seeing them eating something every day and you will feel completely judged at every meal.
yeah, yeah, I mean, like if you date someone who's a performance nutritionist, well, that's basically what they're trained to do for a living.
Well,
So
and I mean, I'm seeing right now, it's interesting because as I dive deeper into my nutritional knowledge, I'm going, "Ooh, like, look at all these guys with all this estrogen." Like, that's what I'm seeing is low testosterone, and then understanding a lot of the poor lifestyle changes that guys made, like talking about back pain and opioids and stuff. Like, I don't want to be pushing your ass around in a wheelchair when you've got a limp dick because you've been on painkillers, because that's the route that you chose. Like, that's not what I'm looking for in a partner.
yeah, yeah, like like there's a good saying that I saw, maybe it was on Instagram, but it was like, you date for who they are now and not the potential.
Mhm.
Because I think that's a real slippery slope to go down. Is you think that, okay, they have potential to be this and that and that. We're gonna date. I'm gonna help them get them there, and we're all gonna be happy. 5 years from now, and that's not the case. Because things change. I can think of a lot of cases where I'm dating a girl and they say like, oh yeah, I'm in the fitness, I'm in the working out, blah blah blah. But they fail to mention, oh yeah, that was 5 years ago, and now they're just working all the time. They're eating like 0 to 1 meals a day, just not being aware. And they're like, oh yeah, once I get less busy, I'm going to get back into it. Like, well, you're never going to become less busy. In fact, you're probably going to become more busy in the future. So it's, yeah, it's a real slippery slope. And I feel as well, at our age as well, into like your mid 30s, a lot of people are desperate to settle down. They either want to have kids, they have a goal of getting married, whether it's parental pressure or their own cultural pressure, and they're like, all right, I'm no longer in it to look for what's best for me. I'm looking to find something that I can tolerate.
Checking the boxes, just checking the boxes, right? And like, to your point, as we get older, it's just slimmer pickings. People typically get married at younger ages, although that's changed. I know for myself, we run into a lot of people who are divorced or separated with kids, and like, it's something that I've tried and I thought was an ideal situation, and then I completely reverted, and I do not want to date anybody with kids. And it's just, the something I heard, a few years ago, and my personal experience, like, I was in an abusive relationship and I was committed to that person and I believed that I should be with them. And that taught me a huge lesson. Like, be careful who you commit yourself to, because it's not like dating is not, the Disney kind of romance comedy that we think it is. Like, and I feel like too, like, to that point, like, I stopped watching rom-coms because Jennifer Lopez is out there and Made in Manhattan lying, and like, this is a very common theme in rom-coms. I'm going to lie to you about who I am, and then later on I'm going to tell you and you're going to forgive me for it. And like, this is exactly what we see with catfishing, is people have this idea of, I can use, like, I've heard my daughter's picture or my friend's picture because more people will talk to me. Then they go and meet them in person. And I'm like, what did you think was going to happen from that point? Like, when you show me that you've deceived me, like, from the get go, like, that's not really you. But people have it in their head that this online persona that they're creating is them. And then when they go to meet them in person, they're completely offended. And, to that point, a lot of people put all of their value and all their self-worth in these relationships so they can check those boxes.
Yeah, like it makes me also makes me wonder with catfishing, what's the end game here?
Yeah.
Okay, you use someone else's pictures or some touched or some enhanced ones. Someone meets with someone, matches with you, they chat with you, they meet you. Like what are you expecting? Like, and then they come out and instead of like, some I don't know, Leonardo DiCaprio looking guy, you get some like 50-year-old guy with beer guts. And it's like, okay, it's like, what was the whole goal of this? And it blows my it's funny because sometimes I wonder if this is a problem that's always persisted with like virtual dating. Like back in the 80s, I guess they had like video dating.
Right.
And
Phone
I think,
dating. Didn't they have phone messages?
oh yeah, and then also like the phone lines as well. And then that's even worse because like you're only going off of pure voice. And I think they charge you like whatever, like $5 or $10 a minute for that stuff.
Hmm.
So they're making big money off that. But it reminds me, and here's our Simpsons reference for the day. There's an episode in the early seasons when Selma becomes, was it? She starts video dating because she's afraid to die alone. Oh, that's right. Their great aunt passes away, and at the funeral, in her video will, she gives some of the advice to not die alone like she did. And she's like, get married and have kids because it's going to be a lonely life. So Selma gets scared into finding like a mate. So she submits her video for the video dating app, for the video dating site. And I think in her video, she like takes her cigarette, puts it in her mouth, and uses her tongue to like tie it into a knot.
Sounds like
And
she's from
then
the Ottawa Valley.
and then you see like Groundskeeper Willie watching that video, and he's like, "Back to the lock with you, Nessie." He throws like the tape into the garbage,
Yeah.
and then through that she meets like Hans Moleman. Oh, and then she dates Jasper, like Grandpa's friend, and he uses a picture of him from like the 50s.
Nice. Yeah, I think I've seen some of those floating around on Tinder.
And she's like, you're a lot younger. You look a lot younger in your pictures. And then he's like, oh, don't let the parents fool you. I can still keep going. And like his teeth fall out, like his his dentures fall out like while he's talking. He's like, oh.
Yeah. Like your partner has like the biggest impact on your success. So if you don't choose the right person, then you're going to be kind of dragged behind. Like I guess that's like not necessarily the best term for it, but I know that in relationships, I typically would date down. I actually would see the guys that were super ripped and good looking, and as much as I'm into fitness and nutrition, I thought that they were too good looking for me and that they were super hung up on their appearance. So I would actually swipe left on those guys with the washboard abs until my most recent serious relationship where this chubby redhead that I lived with was on two dating apps at the end of the day anyway. So if ugly guys are going to cheat on me, well, fuck, I'm not going to date ugly guys anymore. So now it's been only the top tier for me. And I actually there's this TikTok trend called "Shoot Your Shot." And a few months ago, I shot my shot. I've had a crush on a famous celebrity athlete for 10 years. So I took the opportunity to get in his DMs, and that's been pretty much my most successful online experience to date because we're still chatting actually this morning. But unfortunately, I chose the timing of the pandemic. I guess this was like a last ditch effort. Again, afraid of dying alone. So went straight to the top. And we've talked about meeting, but none of us can get over the border. So and I don't want to quarantine. So unfortunately I'm still on Tinder, and I typically do a lot of vetting. Like I know that back in the day, I had a lot more fun. And in the last 3 years, like I don't know what it is with where I am or if it's just more people getting online. It's been terrible. It's taken all the romance out of it. I feel like I'm playing defense. Apps like Tinder, like I said, you can avoid answering some questions. So the other day, I thought I'd be really spontaneous. I haven't been on a date in a while. Started talking to this guy, asked a couple questions, how long has he been single? Does he have kids? Didn't go through like a whole bunch of questions and said, let's meet for chicken wings. So rolled up to Boston Pizza. He was outside smoking a cigarette, and I forget that people smoke. I mean, like, right? Like, I don't even think to ask it because, and it's
Yeah.
funny because it's like, if you're a smoker, I feel like you should disclose that. I mean, smoking's not allowed indoors, right? Like, it's obviously a significant, thing. It's a deal breaker for some people, so that's a good thing to get out, up front. Went inside, started talking about meditation. I was like, okay, there might be a connection here. Talked about how he has empathy for people and can really see them in, whatever situation they're in. And then he launched into like a 10-minute monologue about Trump. And I'm like, you went from empathy from other people to a 10-minute monologue about Trump. And I kept on interjecting, like, I don't have a television. I don't care about politics. I don't care about US politics. And then went on to tell me that he doesn't believe in nutrition, doesn't believe in science, doesn't believe in racism, doesn't believe in sexism. So, of course, lots of great talking points there. I just kept on chugging this wine glass that I had, thinking about how I could get out of there. But at the end of the day, I decided that it was a really good experiment for me to sit across the table from somebody whose beliefs I completely disagree with. But let me tell you, I was ready to like be like, oh, and like run out. But I took the opportunity to engage him and challenge him on some things. And by the end of the date, he told me that he had herpes, and then he deleted me before I left the parking lot because I think that he knew that there was no plan there. And yeah, it was probably the worst date I've ever been on. But I got a lot of feedback on the herpes part actually because I shared that on my story. And I had somebody that got really angry with me, saying that I was shaming it. And here again, that is a deal breaker for me. My health and fitness is my
They
number
probably
one
have
priority.
herpes.
Sorry?
They themselves probably have herpes as well.
Maybe, and like that was maybe that's the case. And if that's the case, like you have to accept that I'm going to make my choice about my body. Like it's funny because again, I went and did some research to my belief is that you tell me up front, like before you meet me in person, why don't you tell me up front instead of building that connection and then learning later that I'm not going to be putting myself in that situation because that's something I've chosen for myself. It doesn't matter who you are. It has nothing to do with anybody's worth. It's just not going to happen. But from what I've seen and doing some research afterwards, reading some blogs and stuff, a lot of people say, oh, well, they don't value you or they don't like, I don't know you, man. Like, I just know that my health and fitness is something I spend a lot of fucking time and money on. And if you think that I'm going to risk that, like, a lot of the stats that I see people talking about, like this guy was like, I could totally have herpes and as long as I don't have an outbreak, I could sleep with somebody without a condom. And I'm like, whoa, that's not. And so, what I like looking at the numbers, actually a high percentage of people are asymptomatic and they actually spread it. And I feel like because we keep on saying, oh, it's not a big deal, that people don't actually treat it like a big deal. And that's why more people have it because of guys like these that keep on having to just justify their self-worth because they've pegged their sexuality as part of their self-worth.
Yeah, that's always a real slippery slope to go down. And I think that's the case, with a lot of dating apps. But I think as well, it depends on the app you're on. Because it seems like, especially in recent years, now you got what, like Tinder, Bumble, Hinge,
Plenty of
there's a whole
fish.
bunch, plenty of fish. There's that other one, coffee meets bagel or something like that.
Those aren't as common out here in remote areas. So it's funny because there's like match.com and
Yeah.
OkCupid. Like my friend Calla met her partner Saul, who's like an amazing person and now my friend on OkCupid. But there's like two guys in BC on OkCupid.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah. So like it's really geography dependent. But like what I do notice is that Tinder's the most popular one because they were the originators. But I think because of the reputation it got, where you can just message people, hook up with them, and get the hell out of there. It turned into a pure hookup app.
Mhm.
So like the number of serious relationships that come out of Tinder, like I can think of one that a friend of mine in Waterloo, she met her boyfriends on Tinder, and I could see that after about 4 years or so, they're no longer together for whatever reason. So, but there's that, and I think like my cousin as well, if I'm not mistaken, I think he met his current wife on Tinder or something like that. One of the apps, anyways. But I mean, like they got along really well. They're married, happily married. They have a kid, and all is good. But I think that's one of the very rare exceptions. Like here in Toronto, Tinder is assumed to just be a hookup app. You got to pay to use it. Bumble went that way. It wasn't initially, but then it just went that way. Hinge was a more interesting one because unlike Tinder, where you're just swiping back and forth, it gives you prompts to fill out.
Yeah.
And you don't just like a profile, you either like one of their pictures or you like one of their prompts. And when you do, it gives you the option to comment on it.
Yeah.
And unlike Tinder or Bumble, it also doesn't hide who has liked you or who has swiped on you. So it opens the communication a lot better. I think where Hinge makes their money is the fact that you only get like 5 or 10 free swipes a day.
Mhm.
And then if you want to do more, you got to pay for it, something like that. And I'm not sure about the other ones, but yeah, but it seems that, depending on the app you use in place like Toronto, it's kind of like there's an expectation of what's going to come out of this.
Yeah.
So I think, that really plays into it. But yeah, like, a lot of people get really defensive, I think, about, their own lifestyle choices. And I think that's just, more so to protect themselves or convince themselves rather that, they're doing the right thing. And I can think about is, like the whole body shaming and body positivity movement. And it's like, okay, yeah, things, it's never black or white. It's always on a sliding scale. And it's that, like you like shaming someone for being fat when they're at the gym makes zero sense. Like that shouldn't be happening because, they're, yeah, sure, they're overweight, but they're also taking the steps necessary, to help improve their health. They're being proactive about it. But then you get other people, who are also, very overweight, but instead they start ranting about, how going to the gym is fat phobic and has roots in racism and white supremacy and colonialism, and anyone who exercises or goes to a gym is supporting fat shaming. And
Okay.
it's like,
Good to
okay,
know. I'll put
like,
that on my resume.
and it's like, okay, this is getting like a bit crazy now. But I think this is just one way people have to cope. And I think this extends to a much bigger thing. And this is something I always like wrestled with, especially as social justice became, pushed more and more to the
Mm.
forefront, which is that, yeah, like in general, social justice is a great thing. Like it's a well-known fact that minorities, people with different sexual orientations, immigrants, women, et cetera, all these like minority groups have really been, fucked over in the past. There is no denying that whatsoever. And definitely, there needs to be like a change in the way society is run, because it's bullshit. But then I think it's that you get a lot of special interest groups who want to push their own agendas, and it kind of fits within that narrative, so they can just go right ahead with it. And I think as well, with the gold internet these days, anyone has a platform now to say whatever the hell they want. So, so you get like the body positivity people, who are saying like, hey, like, why are you making fun of like fat people? And it's like, okay, yeah, like you got a point there. But then someone will take it to the extreme and be like, okay, well, going to the gym is racist. Going to the gym means you hate fat people. It's like, whoa, like that is, not the intended. Like anyone who thinks that is probably insane themselves. And it's more of like a them problem than a societal problem. But that was the thing. And I think, becomes, and I think this is where the argument occurs, like, especially in like, say the US, we get that whole left versus right debate. And it's like, oh, if you're on the left, that means you support communism and BLM, and you want the gays to indoctrinate to groom the children and whatever nonsense is going on.
Steal from the rich, just take all their property, sell it.
And then they assume that if you support the right, then you're racist, you're bigoted, Donald Trump's like your BFF, and all this other stuff. And it's that they try to paint pictures of each other into those buckets.
Right.
And like I was saying to another friend of mine that like in reality, I think most people lie somewhere in the middle. You do get a lot of like the weirdos who are just far to one side. Like I can think of like my own like cousins and friends of mine who are like super far on the left. I can think of one of my cousins actually, and she's been very much into the men are evil, men are bad, all men are bad kind of thing. And I remember her like
It's funny
seeing her.
because I get accused of that a lot, and I'm like, I love men. I know some great men, like, and I can introduce you to them. I'm not like that, but there it is hard to find a good man, especially if you've been on Tinder.
Yeah, yeah, especially a place like Tinder, right? Because everyone there is just for a quick hookup.
Yeah.
But as well, it's like it's that notion of like you can't generalize whole populations. It's like saying that all black people are criminals or all Muslims are terrorists. Like all Chinese people eat dogs.
Well, it's
These
reading into the data, right? Like you look at things like the indigenous population making up 50% of the incarcerations, I think, in federal prison. Is that because they are more likely to be criminals? Not necessarily. It's because they grow up in socioeconomic conditions that really push them in the opposite direction of somebody like myself who grew up in a white privileged household, fully like food security, university paid for. I have a completely different path and tons of opportunities that somebody else doesn't have, and those lead you down different paths. Unfortunately, if you're not starting out in a privileged position, it can be very easy to fall into those kinds of situations because you don't really have another option.
Yeah, I think like this is one of like the actual benefits of the whole of the current movement. When if you want to call it social justice, it's that it does bring awareness and education that hey, like there are other people out there who are in a much more different situation than you, and the rules you apply to your reality cannot be applied to theirs because it's like okay, we're all going to e-learn because COVID. Well, like what if you grow up in like inner city Chicago where you don't even have any internet in your apartment?
Not even inner city Chicago. Let's talk about Northwest British Columbia. Like it's funny because I just didn't even fathom that there was no service or internet service in certain areas, but that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, so like this is like where I really support the movements because like I feel that one reason some people will argue against it, saying like, oh yeah, racism doesn't exist, sexism doesn't exist, is that they've never seen it themselves because they're not part of that targeted group. And I think that was a spot I was in where I was just like, yeah, like people who were poor are just lazy.
Mhm.
But no, it's like in reality, like there's a lot of extenuating circumstances that are all going to lead into that. Like I can think about, the way I was raised and like the Asian way of looking at things. I remember I was taught growing up, if you ever see one of those people, like with like the signs and like a cup, asking for change, is
Yep.
they were like bad students and like they didn't try in school and they were like the ones partying in school and they
Bad
don't deserve.
students, eh? Didn't realize that. Wow.
Yeah, like I've lived for the longest time, like until like my 20s. That oh, like the guy panhandling on the corner, he didn't pay attention in school.
Must have yeah, he didn't pass math class, then that
And
could be
now
you.
now you like when I say it out loud, it's like what kind of horseshit is this? Like that's that's completely asinine way, and that's also as well. Like if when you're younger, if you question your parents like that, well, like oh, that's another disaster in itself.
Yeah,
So
it's funny because like the online world, you hold your phone and it's curated so that it just you get that information that you want that's curated to you. And so it constructs this world around you where you kind of have a reinforcement of your own life and your own perspective. And so hearing someone's different perspective like, for a lot of people it's interesting because I just feel like they think it's challenging their identity, and I think that we've just seen that so much in social media, as COVID has gone on. I think of just like going back to that whole herpes thing, people take this on as their identity. And when I was out there and I was like this, I'm like, this is my opinion, this is how I feel, and this is how I'm going to, conduct myself in dating when it comes to my body. But yet I got attacked for that because I'm judging others. And I'm like, this has nothing to do with anybody else. This has to do with the research that I've done because I have dated somebody with herpes. And frankly, The biggest challenge I had was the guy was completely emotionally unavailable because he had so much shame from this disease. And I mean, like, I like to relate that to, somebody, a woman that's infertile. You know how many guys will not date a woman that's infertile? And that is
Really?
fair. If the guy wants to have kids, fair enough, man. If you want
Mhm.
to have kids and that's part of your life, then you probably don't, it's a waste of time to date somebody that's infertile. And those are good things to get out up front. I remember I went on a date with a guy, and it was a surprise at the end of it when he told me at the end of the date that he was divorced with 3 kids. And he actually had had a vasectomy. So he wasn't interested in having more kids. And a lot of women got angry at him for, again, wasting their time. And, it's funny because I got attacked for my view in terms of you should have told me this up front. That's what I think. And this person, said no. And there's a lot of people that believe like, you should let the person get to know you and blah blah blah, but that could hurt more. Like if you have somebody that gets to know you, I know for me it's just, I know what I want. I've been single for a while. My health and fitness is my priority. So I mean, at the end of the day, still, I don't know why somebody would that smokes would want to go out with me, but there I was on the date, and he checked so many boxes of somebody that I didn't want to be around, or even talk to. So, lesson learned: do your research before going on a date. Ask those questions. I suggest leading with Black Lives Matter, seeing how they react. You talked about left wing, right wing. It's funny because I just like chicken wings for the most part. I really don't try to affiliate with any kind of political party. I think the system is bullshit. Like, it's so bullshit. Like, we are still using a system that was built in the 1800s. Technology has far surpassed the ability of our government to maintain a safe, like, society. And it's just unreal how we're seeing the effects of that. I mean, the government has so many lawsuits piling up against it because it just can't keep up. And really, like, the dangers of the online space is really my biggest concern. In British Columbia, huge increase in child pornography, and not necessarily because there's adults out there doing it. It's probably because children have access to phones and cameras. They're learning about sex from porn, and they're exchanging photos back and forth. The thing is, if you're exchanging a photo of a nude photo of somebody under the age of 18, that is a child porn incident, and that can affect you for life. But none of these kids know about it.
Wow. Man, that would be a terrible way to get screwed if, like, you're in high school, you got a girlfriend, you're exchanging nudes, all of a sudden you get charged with like child pornography and you go to prison, like, ugh, like that's a game over.
Yeah.
Like you are dying in there in that prison.
Well, just
Uh,
even like being up north, I got, dick pics from guys, and I'm like, you don't know who I am. Like, I could be a major employer in the area in human
you're 13
resources.
years old.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's the other thing too. But like, I just look at it from a career standpoint. Like, it's fucking stupid. Like, you don't like, especially like if you haven't met the person, you don't know who they are. And I actually listened to a really interesting podcast about romance scams. Apparently, the industry is booming. $300 million in romance scams. Was listening to a woman whose mother got divorced, jumped on the online dating scene, and like, it was an absolute scam for her. She ended up giving this guy like over $100,000 and going bankrupt at the end of the day because they started talking online. It turns out this scammer was using photos of a weatherman and grabbing them from his Instagram. So selfies with his dog and in the kitchen and blah, blah, blah. The guy is gay and has a partner of 11 years. And this woman was in a relationship with this person for, over a year, and gave him all this money. But people don't realize that this is all fake. Like, they're just talking with something. Like, it could be a bot for the most part.
Like, this reminds me of like the internet 1.0. Like when the internet first came out, people just assumes that whoever you're talking to on the other line is who they say they are, because like why would anyone want to lie on the internet?
Yeah.
So I feel like stuff like that, of someone who was smart but cunning, back during internet 1.0. I'm sure all kind of shit like this existed back then, but I feel nowadays only one people falling for that are people who just got on the internet, like old people, for example.
Yeah.
And but it's like, but there's other like red flags that make you question their common sense abilities.
Biggest red flag for me is railroad. If they work for CP Railroad or CN Railroad, massive red flag.
Or like all like the rail workers, just
Oh,
like
they're isolated. This guy was a railroad. I was like, ugh. I'm like, where do you work? He's like, on the railroad. And then I was like, oh, shouldn't have done it. Shouldn't have done it. Learn my lesson.
so I have a story related to that, but just going back, like red flags, like like because I see the romance scam stuff sometimes on the news, like they'll like make it part of their consumer reports, warning all the old people, or don't fall for this. But it's like if someone you haven't even met in real life is asking you for like 10, 15, 50K, like what the hell? Like you're just gonna say yes and just give it to them? Like you've never talked on the maybe you've talked on the phone, you've never seen them in person, you haven't seen their Instagram profile, their Facebook profile, their LinkedIn, video chatted with them, like, and like they're asking you for like 4 to 5 figure sums of money. It's like if you fall for that, I almost feel like, well, that's kind of what you get, right?
Yeah,
Just
like
like,
you believe that you believe that you're in love with somebody that you've never even like video chatting, like that's a really easy way to confirm, that that's the same person.
yeah,
That being said, I did come across a video chat scam on Tinder. Well, I think it was a scam, or this guy was fucked because he said that he was in the U.S. military and he used specifically Viber to send videos. And so he was like video chatting me, but he wasn't. I couldn't hear him, and so I think that then I've heard that this it could be true, or I'm pretty sure this is how it works. They will grab videos from somebody else and then call you with the video to make it seem like you're connecting with this person. And sure enough, he talked about getting engaged right away. So anytime that if it seems like a Jennifer Lopez movie, run away.
yeah, like first there's like some guy in like India or something, just
Yeah.
like stealing the videos.
This
But
is not You've Got Mail. This is not Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, guys.
yeah, the probability of that happening in real life are just like 1 to 1 billion.
Yeah.
Like not gonna happen. And like going back as well to like like just in general, like inappropriate use of certain platforms. I remember reading an article once. It was like a lady who posted this, and how she like guys were sliding into her DMs on LinkedIn, and they were like commenting on her picture, going like, I just had to message you, looking at what you're wearing in your picture, and she's wearing a freaking business, like she's wearing like a suit. And they're saying like, oh, it was like a white t-shirt with like a with the suit jacket, and like the guy was saying like, well, judging by what you're wearing, you seem like the kind of girl who would accept these kinds of messages. And she was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, I'm literally wearing a suit. You realize I know exactly who you work for because we're on LinkedIn. This is going to come back to bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
And sure enough, like when she published the article, you could see like who the guy was, and like and you can see like the log of like their chats. And it's like, man, like I was saying to my friend the other day, like if I was a woman, I'd be so pissed. Like with all like the bullshit they get, like yeah, like I'll place LinkedIn, like if you want to commit like career suicide, that's the best place to go like hit on chicks.
It is. Who's got the best dating stories and shares them online is Sarah Robles. We went going back to the whole body positivity thing. I think that she's a great example. It's funny because people work really hard to hide their bodies, and Sarah the other day shared some screenshots of conversations, and she asked all these guys, what made you swipe right on me? And they loved how strong she was. They loved her body, even though she is not your conventional hourglass figure. She's 5'11". She is, probably over 250 pounds. I'm not sure of her stats, but she is a kick-ass chick and like full confidence, and she owns herself. Like that's, I think the cool thing for me was, having my own insecurities about my body and who I am in the world. And to that point, you're just not everybody's cup of tea. Like, that's okay. But people are going on these apps because they want to get the validation and the dopamine rush from these swipes. And then they're, sinking all of their self-worth into it. And if that's what you do, if you're seeking your validation and your self-worth into meeting somebody off the internet, whether you have a different size body, whether you're someone like myself, I see a lot of guys that are like looking for a really feminine woman. And I'm like, not me, like that's just not me, looking for somebody to have kids, not me, you know. Um, so I think that people get a little bit too wrapped up in being popular and appealing to everybody. And in the end, it does way more harm than good.
Yeah, like it's, like going back to what you said earlier, like everyone's entitled to their own preferences. Like if you don't want to date someone who's overweight, like you don't have to, and that doesn't make you fat phobic. If you don't like to date certain races because that's not your cup of tea, fine, it doesn't make you racist. But the issue that comes is when you start forcing that opinion onto other people. Just like in the example you gave, like some guys were like, I want a feminine woman. Okay, teach your own. Great. That's not going to be me. I'm cool with that. But if some guy were to come into your DMs and be like, listen, Janet, you're not feminine enough for me. So number one, who the fuck are you?
Why just
And
swipe
why are
right
you
on me
like,
in the first place?
yeah, exactly. And it always brings me back to our favorite Instagram page, You Look Like a Man.
Oh my God, there's so much
We should really do like
anger.
a shout out to them sometime because like
Yeah.
that's like a really entertaining. That's like one of my top five,
Yeah,
top
you
10.
find it entertaining. I find it so angering. Like, I will go find the guys on Instagram where, like, I've actually emailed to complain about a coach who was fat shaming Sarah.
No, right. I
I like
remember her.
fully like went and I actually I left a review, a Google review on their Google review page to let everybody know.
Yeah, like again, like for me, like I don't have any personal experience in this world. So that when I looked at it, I was like, this is pure insanity. And because like on social media, like all my accounts are private. Like my Facebook, you can see that I'm a guy. My Instagram, you don't even know what I am. You think I'm a cat.
Yeah.
So no one messages me, right? I keep a low profile. So when I see all this stuff being published in these women's lifting videos, it's like, man, it's like guys going in there saying like, oh, like she's got man hands or she's not feminine enough, and like it's like,
That's what my boyfriend's friends called me when I was 16. They called me man hands.
but it's like who asked you like why are you even here,
Well,
like.
there's a lot of like entitlement. Like, that's the thing that's come out of it. Like, why do so many people, and I think it comes from just celebrity culture. Like, we have a culture of gossiping, commenting on people's bodies and stuff like that. And it's created this idea that, yeah, your opinion fucking matters. It does not. Your opinion about my body doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I never thought about that. Like you think you look at like the sun or I don't know, like what those like
Inside
whatever.
Edition and stuff like that. Like, the thing is, it's even on Snapchat now. When I go up on Snapchat and I can see Kim Kardashian's dating Travis Barker, and I'm like watching it, even though I think they're both fucked in the head. But like now I'm like, oh, okay, what are they doing? And we're talking about them, and oh, they're wearing this bikini, or so and so is lifting this, or maybe they've gained weight, or like we have like the celebrity culture. I think really drives a lot of garbage that we see in regular society.
Yeah, celebrity worship is as bananas, especially when they start asking their opinions on world matters. Like I remember the time like Leonardo DiCaprio was like filming like a movie somewhere in Alberta or
Oh yeah,
something.
yeah, that was up at Spray Lakes. I've been on a couple of the sites that he was at. Fortress Mountain
and,
was one of them. Yeah, definitely.
and it's and it's like why are you asking these guys? Like
Well,
like these like the least educated
that was a
people.
Chinook. The thing is that
Yeah.
Alberta gets these warm pockets of air that come through the mountains and they melt all the snow. And all of a sudden, Leonardo DiCaprio was like, global warming because we can't film our movie. Because they actually took, they had all these camp setups. They had a whole bunch of fake snow because they ended up driving by the movie set. So all of a sudden, Leonardo DiCaprio started caring about the environment. Funny enough, the site that he's at, Fortress Mountain, is now extracting water out of a hidden glacier inside the mountain. And there's this whole uproar from the conservation community that's really upset about the disruption that it's going to have to the bio environment, or the balance of everything. So interesting to watch that. And I don't know that Leonardo has gotten the update, or maybe he's drinking the water. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, like the whole reason, it's like the whole celebrity culture in general is just like pure insanity. Like, okay, like, I get why they're making so much money, good old capitalism. And given how much money, box office movies draw, okay, yeah, you're entitled to your, whatever, $50 million. But then they start getting revered as false gods. And it's like all of a sudden we're really concerned about what Kim Kardashian thinks about child labor laws, or what Paris Hilton thinks about animal rights.
Yeah.
And it's like, who even, like, why? It's like these are like the worst educated people. They didn't even go to school. This is why they're entertainers. And
Yeah.
it's like, if I want to watch a good movie and I want to be entertained, I want to be enthralled for a few hours, I'll look you up. But if I want information about global warming, I might just go talk to a scientist instead.
Yeah. You talked about Paris Hilton. It's funny because I watched her documentary on YouTube because it was free, obviously. It's not worth paying for. And like definitely like I want to say that, like that kind of side of the culture, that party girl, I grew up in that. Like I feel like that was like the role model for me. And I was trying to be skinny. Obviously, I'm not fucking
Mid
famous.
2000s, any girl
Like I've
who
got my
was,
juicy couture velour suit, my friggin' mesh back hat. Like I still have all that garbage. Um,
The Von
and
Dutch
so
hat.
that was like in my 20s. And now, at the age of 37, I went to watch that documentary and I'm like, holy shit, she's still the same fucked up piece of shit that she was previously. She's still getting drunk. She's got this new boyfriend. She's DJing at this fucking party. And her and their boyfriend are fighting, and like it's just this mega drama because she has this loser who she's dating who wants attention, and she's like, I'm a DJ, and like da 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 da. And like I finished that movie being like, nothing's changed. Your life still sucks. Like I'm like, why are we making content? Like people are watching this and being like, oh, she overcame her like suffering at boarding school. Like, yeah, boarding school is pretty hard, but like at the end of the day, you're fucking Paris Hilton. And like honestly, like please do better. Like you're just doing the same shit you did like 15 years ago.
Yeah, like she comes from one of the wealthiest families in America with the Hilton hotel chain. And it's like, yeah, you really could have aimed just a little bit higher than, going out DJing parties and doing MDMA and blowing, drinking for the past, God, like 15 years now. Like there's two examples I can think of. It reminds you ever seen the movie Dazed and Confused?
Yeah. That's like
It
one of the
reminds me
movies I've seen. Usually my answer to that question is no.
It reminds me of what's his name, Matthew McConaughey's character,
Yeah, exactly.
Wooderson, and he's like in his 20s or 30s, and he's hanging out with
The high school
high
kids.
school
Cause
seniors,
see,
and
they think he's cool.
yeah, and they think he's so cool, and he's like, I remember they're in front of the bowling alley, and he's like, that's what I love about them high school girls, man. I keep getting older, they keep staying the same age.
So
Yes, they
creepy.
do. And like, and I remember at the end of the movie when the cops come, and because they're drinking in the football stadium, and like it's like Wooderson's classmates who are also in their 20s and 30s, and they're like, what are you doing? What are you doing
Yeah.
hanging out with the high school kids? But I feel like, for someone like that, like it's that their life probably peaks like when they were in high school or in their early 20s. And it's just some trying to, cling on, make that part of their identity, that this is when I used to be cool. But then, it's like for guys, for example, you end up as that weird bald and fat 40-year-old guy in the club trying to dance with like girls in like their late teens.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no matter, what kind of guys try to, and it's interesting as well because with dudes on the internet, like especially, like the whole incel culture, a lot of
Mm,
guys, are very much like, don't get married so you can, live the bachelor life and you can bang chicks in their 20s when you're in your 40s. But I feel like that's just like a fantasy that doesn't actually exist, except in the minds of these guys who haven't left their parents, their mom's basement in the past 20 something years.
well, I feel like you could find probably a whole bunch of guys in the oil rigs that are doing that, but that's the money, right? Like that's definitely a culture, and I feel like it's bred into dating. I know that like my dad told me that I needed to find a rich doctor. And that's kind of like I feel like an unsaid, or maybe it actually is, explicitly said that you go after, that's the that's the arrangement in relationships, is that guys make the money and girls don't. And you know what? You were talking about that whole Matthew McConaughey thing. Interestingly enough, the more educated a woman is, the less popular she is on dating apps.
Hmm.
And this is like a serious consideration, not even just with the dating apps, but I think that's a reflection of the, juxtaposition of women and men in general. I'm looking at going after my doctorate, and I'm like, okay, I'm 37, pickings are slim, and I'm about to slim them down even more. But you know what? At the end of the day, if those guys don't want to talk to me because I'm educated, thank you. I don't want to
Yeah,
talk to you
that's
either.
probably a good thing. That's just like I guess that's just a built-in filter.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a verifiable stat for people, because it's funny. I talked to a gentleman the other day who married his high school sweetheart, and I'm like, yeah, man, I'm like really educated. I have a really hard time, meeting somebody who, shares the same interests and lifestyle. And with the online dating thing, it's like, I don't know, you previously, let's say 20 years ago, you would only be exposed to the people in your social circle. I like online dating because it exposes me to more people who I can share interests with. I mean, that's how you and I met. We met in a fitness forum. So it's a really good place to find your tribe. But a lot of people just try to make their tribe everybody, or use it for alternate purposes. I wanted to touch back on what you said about open relationships. I haven't seen that many. It seems like there's more in your area. And I know someone who is in an open relationship with their partner, and I think she does it really, really well. However, I don't think a lot of people do this well. Like, I see um, people that are like parents, and like, I don't know, as I see a lot of parents that don't have enough time for their kids as it is. So you have enough time for your kids and your wife and a side piece. No, I like that's interesting. I just, I think you probably could spend more time with your children as a parent. That's your first and foremost priority, not finding a side piece. And at the end of the day, maybe you need to work on your relationship and make it better. Um, I know that kids often divides people, but that's just a part of relationship. So I think that there are people that do it well. However, I think that there's a lot of people who are looking for a distraction from their life, entertainment, or a distraction from their own flaws, because relationships show you your own flaws. So yeah, like I said, there's some people on there where they get on there and I'm like, yeah, if I was your partner, I wouldn't want to date you. I'd want to sleep with other people too. Like, why don't you go to the gym instead? Like, that's what I wonder. Like, you could be a whole new person yourself.
Yeah, like I learned a new term on these dating apps called ethical non-monogamy.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, which is that you ethically date and sleep with other people other than your partner. And I don't know if they're swingers or into what do you call it? Cuckoldry, is that the
Oh,
term?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I've run into a couple guys on dating apps who are into that. Like, actually, like the kink scene has been a little bit scary. Like, I had a guy that said he wanted me to drive for 3 hours to Kitimat, get a hotel room that he would pay for, go hook up with another guy, and then he would come up back out to the hotel room and spoil me. And I'm like, listen, I think it's really cute that you think I could find a guy to hook up with in one night. Like, I can't find one guy that I want to sleep with, much less two. And that was the second time I had a guy. Back when I was in Ottawa, I swiped with this guy like really hot, and he's like talking about hooking up, and he's like, yeah, maybe we could find another guy too, and he could have a big
Whoa.
black dick. And I'm like, the whole thing about cuckolding is that, like, it's your partner, and so there's an element of shame or jealousy in there, or whatever. But on a dating app, like, I'm not your partner. At this point, you're not actually in the kink. You're just facilitating some screwed up shame part of yourself.
Yeah, like I've seen like some people like in their some girls in their apps like, oh, like by the way, I have a boyfriend, but he likes it when I hook up with other guys and he wants to watch. And it's like, okay then. But it makes me wonder, like, what's this guy? Like, I'd love to just like get into the mind of this guy and like what his deal is.
Yep. I s-
Because
yeah, I was gonna say, I see a lot of people that say that they're into BDSM and stuff like that, and that's like another one where I'm like, oh, like a key part of that kink is trust, and like, I don't know who the fuck you are. So like, how
yeah,
the fuck are you gonna have trust? Like, you're literally gonna go and meet a stranger and let them tie you up?
yeah.
That's called serial killers. Like, that's called murder.
Yeah, you let them like tie you up and blindfold you and gag you, and it's like, okay.
Well, and you know what? We see a lot of like in there's a lot of abusive porn coming out, and to be quite frank, I stopped like hooking up with anybody and became very disengaged with the dating scene because the last few guys that I was interested in and things started to move along intimately, they went straight for my fucking throat on the first time we hooked up. And
Ooh.
I'm like, I've been in an abusive relationship. Like I'm like ready to call the fucking cops, but it's so normalized. It's funny because I see a lot of memes that play into this, like talking about choking. Like, choking is when you have something in your mouth. This is strangling. And strangulation is the first, like the number one common cause of death in domestic partnerships. And I know a
Wow.
woman who was in a relationship with a guy who, and they were into that, like some sexy, as they call it, choking. She said that she watched his eyes go dark. He started to strangle her. They got into an altercation. She ended up actually biting him in the balls. She's been
Jesus
charged with
Christ.
assault. So she's dealing with that. He went on to kill his next girlfriend by strangulation. He is now out on bail because he's a pharmacist here in the area. And of course, back on the dating apps.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That is pure insanity. It makes me forget, like, there's a lot of like just fucked up people out there. Because yeah, the choking thing, yeah, like, if you trust your partner, they're into it, it's beautiful. Like, everyone's happy. But like on the first time you ever discussed it, you don't know if they're that's as playful, if they're looking to like to put you out. Same thing, like with like what if a cop tells you don't reach into your pockets. There's a reason for that. Well, you might be just reaching for your license, but you also might have a gun. We don't know that because there's no trust established.
Yeah.
So same thing applies there. But yeah, just so many like weird, like fucked up situations that just don't seem to really mesh well. And like, I don't know, like, because I know here in Toronto is obviously like a much larger population to draw from. I think like culturally or politically, that does influence who's on these apps as well.
Hmm.
For example, Toronto is obviously I would say like a nowadays very left-leaning society in general. You should see like number of women in their profiles are like the very first prompt is like fuck Trump, like fuck the
Yeah, I'm pretty
conservatives, fuck
close
the
to doing
conservatives.
that, so I avoid the last situation that I had.
But or like like don't waste my time if you're into this kind of thing. But it just seems that like certain personality types beget like certain needs, and it goes back to like what you said, like you're not for everyone. And like I know, like when I was like on the apps, I would like I actually counted it. I was like a 25-1 no to yes ratio,
Yep.
if not higher, where it's just like
Well, I
nope,
heard
nope.
that Asian men actually were less popular, but they've become more popular now.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, maybe it's
Interesting.
because they've seen you on the podcast. They're like, whoa.
There you go. Single-handedly pulling up the percentile.
Yeah. No, I've been watching some short educational videos, TikToks, about dating algorithms because some of the people that are working on the dating algorithm, or sorry, working on the dating apps, have been sharing some things. Saw the funniest thing the other day though. This woman who works for the dating app, she's actually in the customer service department. So she received a message from a user, and the woman was complaining that this guy that she matched with doesn't want to meet up. He's talking to her all the time, but he doesn't want to meet up. So she's wondering, is he a real person? And so the customer service rep was able to find him. She did a reverse Google search and on images, and like, I've got good news and bad news. Good news is yes, he's a real person. The bad news is he's currently incarcerated and he's serving life for blah 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 because he was a
Whoa.
prison inmate.
Whoa. Like, oh, okay. So he's in prison, he's got Tinder, and he's just like using it as a pen pal.
Yeah, exactly.
You ever watch like those prison TikToks?
I'm watching the prison feminism ones now. Is that what you're
Um,
talking about? Or
No, because like it's relatively easy to get a cell phone in prison nowadays, and all these inmates have making their own TikTok. There's literally doing TikTok dances in their cells
oh,
or in the common areas, and this is that you can go on YouTube and find compilations of prison TikToks, and it's all these like hardened criminals like giggling like little girls as they're doing like doing the little dances
Cute.
or like all little TikTok challenges, and it's one of the most wholesome things I've seen.
It's a
Like,
cruel way for them to be able to engage in a societal trend where you don't actually usually get to do that. They can jump on everything. That's awesome.
yeah, because like like these guys are probably in there, for without trying to judge too much on appearance, probably for like some kind of violent crime.
Mhm, mhm.
But and you see them like here they are like doing like like where like you run to the left or to the right and it shows like the option.
Yeah,
They're
yeah, yeah,
doing
yeah.
that. They're doing that one. I see them doing like this it's a bunch of dance challenges. And yeah, it's like hilarious, and you can see they're having such a good time doing these. But
Oh, man.
but you gotta like, and but then you remember like, oh wait, they're in here for a reason.
Yeah,
But
they're,
then again, as well, it also lends itself to the whole prison industrial complex. So probably like three-quarters of the guys shouldn't even be in that prison in the first place. But like the prisons make money for sending people there. Judges might get a under the table kickback for that. So that's just that discussion for another day. I feel about like the insane incarceration rates in the U.S. and who's profiting off of that.
yeah, I actually going back to that what I said, the prison feminism or feminist prison or something. There is a really cool movement of men, and they are really showing how the patriarchy and toxic masculinity has contributed to an environment where that's why a lot of people in jail and or a lot of men in jail ended up in jail because they had these internalized beliefs about their masculinity. So it's been really amazing to see that kind of transformation. Being mindful of the time here, Ben, I'm sure we could go on about dating forever because I know I've got tons of stories, share the tops ones with you. Again, if you don't like what we have to say, you can go ahead and hit the unsubscribe button because we are the unsubscribe tribe. Ben, if people want to send you a DM, maybe tell you that you look good in a suit or hit on your cat, where can they find you?
All right. So my personal Instagram, you can check that out at BCYLEE. If you want to learn about my business or perhaps get yourself a biomechanical assessment, feel better, perform better, be the best physical version of yourself, you can find my business on Instagram at Fortius Labs.
Great. And I am, of course, Rocky's Adventure. If you don't like Trump, you believe in nutrition, believe in science, believe in racism, believe in sexism, and don't have herpes, send me a DM. I'm there. Anyways, guys, have yourself a great day. Talk next time.